All right. Hey and stuff. Figured I'd tell you guys another story of sorts. This is actually about the time I realized that I was probably going to be a third wheel my whole life. So it was right around when I was 13, and my best friend at the time, still my best friend, but my best friend at the time, a girl was like, come over to my house and we can do things, you know. She's like, it's gonna happen for you, and like, we're both virgins, so even I'm fired up and I have nothing to do with it, you know what I mean? But I'm like, oh yeah, this kid's getting it in. So the only problem is, we lived in one part of town, she basically lived in another school district. For when you're 13, that's a tough cover. So I mean, first things first, I told my parents I was going to his house. He told his parents he was going to my house. Classic kid stuff. Worked like a charm. We're freaking charming. But so we're like trying to figure out how we're gonna get 15 miles away, you know? So we go to our other friend's house who has an older brother, and we're like, can you drive us? Like, please drive us. And he's like, no, I'm not driving you, which was awesome. But then, so he's like, I do have people that will drive you though. And at the time, I think he was like a senior in high school, and we're, I think, 7th, 8th grade. So he calls his friends, who, it's like these like hood white girls, like, I don't know, they were just thuggish white girls. I don't even know how to explain it. Their hair was gelled to their forehead and stuff, you know what I'm saying? And they wore, I don't even know, it was like the girl version of like Junko jeans, you know what I'm talking about? But like tight and stuff. I don't know. I think Junko jeans is like I think that's like a goth thing anyway. I used to have a bright red pair that were hand-me-downs from my cousin. But so they're like, we'll bring you, just give us $15. And we only had like $10. We're like, can we give you 10? They're like, yeah. So these like 18-year-olds were just like, yeah, we'll bring you all the way to the other side of town for $10. So we're driving, and we can like clearly tell that they're just not good at driving. So we're kind of afraid the whole time that they're driving us. But they drop us off, and it's like the middle of winter, and neither of us have been to this girl's house, and she lives out in the woods. So they drop us off like a block, I guess in wood terms, I don't know, like a quarter mile away or something. I don't know if that's how much a block is, but so they drop us off, and it's like freezing out. We're trying to call this girl, but I guess because it took so long for those people to bring us there and stuff, that the girl that my friend was going to hook up with had fallen asleep. So now we're in the middle of nowhere, like calling her. She's not answering. We're like, oh fuck, what are we gonna do? Because we don't know those people's number that just dropped us off. So we're kind of screwed. So we start kind of like walking up the street. We get to this girl's house, and she has like a pond in her yard. So we go on the other side of the pond, and we're like sitting there in between the pond and the woods and just trying to call her. I think Nick's peeing into the pond because I was facing away, because that's how, yeah, I was like pretty PG when I was 13. But so he's peeing into this pond. I'm looking in the woods a little bit, and then all of a sudden a cop car comes in with its lights flashing in the driveway, and it's just like, John McClane, get out. And I know John McClane, but he fucking said John McClane. He's like, get over here. And we're like, oh shit. And I turned to be like, Nick, we should probably just talk to him because we're not John McClane. And as I'm saying this, Nick is, God, I already threw his name out. I said his name. But Nick is running into the woods, and he's like just death sprinting. So I'm just stuck there like looking at the cop with the light on me. So I turn and I start running. And it turns out that the woods we run into is in fact actually a giant swamp. So we end up like running like soaked up to our knees through this giant swamp. And what happens is like we're just soaked, we're running. The cops, we can like see them in the distance, but we ran like a good like couple hundred yards. And we get to the edge, like right before this road, and Nick jumps over this bush, and he's like, be careful, that's a pricker bush. So I was like, oh, all right. So I run and jump over the pricker bush. My legs are just profusely like bleeding. Like, I don't know how he got through it, but I ran through that same shit and my legs were destroyed. But so we're still running. We run up to the top of this hill, like in the woods, and we're sitting there for like a good 30 minutes, and we can see the cops like driving around down on the thing, and we still haven't really done anything besides being 13 in the dark. Like, that's all we've really done. And we're like just waiting. So after like half an hour, we don't see any more lights. We walk down to the street. We really don't know where we are still, and we start walking, And as we're walking, a car starts driving like towards us, like way down the road. So we're like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. So we run and hide under like this perfect like line of trees. Like it's just like 20 trees in one line. And we run and like jump on the ground, and we're just like laying there. It was a cop car that drove by, he didn't see us, which was dope. So we start trying to call this girl again. And then we also start trying to call our friend's older brother, because we're like, dude, we're fucked. Can you just come pick us up? And I think it has to be like 30 degrees or something outside. Like it's silly cold outside. No one's answering us or anything. So we end up, I think it's like 12 at night at that point. We end up laying there in the cold for 7 hours, just under a tree. And it was cold, so we had to pretty much huddle for warmth. It was just pretty terrible. But because we ran through that swamp, my feet were soaked. Like my shoes were soaked, Nick's shoes were soaked. Nick took his shoes off and fucking put them under my stomach, and his feet were fine. I left my shoes on because I was like, you're stupid, I'm leaving my shoes on. But I think I almost got frostbite in my feet. But finally, like, we literally just kind of like huddle under these trees, and I watched the moon go from like middle of the sky like all the way down, because I couldn't sleep. It was just 30 degrees and terrible out, and no answers. And then finally the sun starts coming out. We get a hold of the girl, and she like walks down the street to meet us, because she's also 13. So it's kind of just kids being kids. And she brought us Hot Pockets because we said we were really hungry, but she didn't even cook them all the way because they were still frozen and stuff. So we still are just super hungry, and we just eat these mostly frozen Hot Pockets. And at this point I can't even walk because my feet are like frozen. So I'm like hobbling down the road, and what happens is we go back to her house, and they're like, we're still gonna do it. And I was just like, oh, cool. She's like, you can go lay in my brother's room. So then I went and laid in her brother's room, and they got it on. And that was it. So now, like, he's got his virginity out of the way. So now, like, I'm thinking that I have to do that and stuff, you know? So we played this game called the Nervous Game a lot in middle school, high school, where you basically, a girl would put her hand on your like knee and be like, are you nervous? And then you would say no, then she would move it up a little bit, and then be like, are you nervous? And you're supposed to say no, you know? And then she gets like halfway up your leg, and she's like hoping she feels something, but she doesn't, you know? But it is what it is. But I don't know, you're supposed to, basically that's the whole point of the game, is that they're supposed to touch your wiener and stuff. And so I'm like, I would always do this thing like where they would get halfway up my leg, and I would just be like, this is fucking stupid, this is a stupid game, like, let's not play this game, this is terrible. Until one day, this girl said, like, my parents aren't home, you should come over and swim in the pool with me, on like, it was like summer or something like that. So I said, okay. I was like, dope, this is gonna be it, like, I'm gonna get it in, so fuck you, buddy, because like now I'm also not a virgin, you know? And so what happens is, like, I get there and she has a friend with her, so it's 2 girls and me, so it's already like the best thing that could happen. Like, that's better, I guess. I mean, I was more nervous, but like, I've never had to perform before anyway, so it doesn't matter. And so she, like, we're in the pool and I'm crushing it, and she starts to like play the nervous game, and she gets to like she's on my knee, and she's like, are you nervous? I'm like, no. She's like, are you nervous? Moves up, I'm like, no. And then she gets like halfway up, she's like pretty disappointed and stuff. And then I'm like, fuck this, dude, like, you're not doing it, like, she's touching your wiener, this is going down, you're crushing it. And then what happens is, like, she touched like my wiener and stuff, you know, not to be graphic, but she touched it, and she just started laughing, you know, how girls laugh at wieners and stuff. And that was the worst. They don't really brace you for that. They're like, yeah, they're gonna laugh a lot when they first touch it. But so that was it. They backed into the pool, and then they called me boner boy number 2, which that's a thing now. That's in my head forever, that I'm boner boy number 2. I'm not even the best at it. But yeah, I guess she had given some other guy a boner. But then, like, so after, like, I'm still trying to lose my virginity because I have to, you know? I don't have to, but like, the game is on. And so what happens is, like, I go to high school and I start talking to this girl who had given like a guy a blowjob before, you know? And I'm like, this is it, like, I'm next, like, I'm gonna be the guy that gets the blowjob now, you know? So it's just like, I'm like, this is gonna happen, definitely. Like, I start bragging to all my friends. I'm like, yeah, dude, like, girl that gave the blowjob, like, because that's how guys are. That's not how girls are flowers, but like, that's what happens is that, like, I start bragging about it to my friends. They're like, yeah, but she sucked that guy's wiener. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, as I said, I'm next. And they're like, no, that means like you sucked that guy's wiener. And I'm like, oh, you fucking rascals. Like, that's not, because kids are the worst. So like using like kid logic, I'm like, oh yeah, well with that logic, then you've been sucking your dad's dick your whole life and your grandpa's dick's like all over your forehead, you know? And then kids are the worst, because then they're just like, oh yeah, well then you've been sucking your dad's dick and your grandpa's dick's all over your forehead. I'm like, joke's on you, my parents are divorced. It's just this guy John's dick now. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that's it. She never touched me.